Good evening, Paul.
Cuckoo.
Are you afraid of a little dark? How are we doing, folks? This is our long-awaited Longlegs review. I cannot wait to get into this film. But first, Paul Tams is joining me here tonight. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, man. Yeah, like you said, highly anticipating this film. Ever since you got me onto it, I remember you showed me that quick teaser trailer like a few months back, and this film looks fucking crazy. And we've kept our eye on it ever since. And I've literally been in work today, and all I've been thinking about all day is like, I just want to get out and go check this film out, man. Because the early reviews started coming out, and people got to see it early and blowing it up, and that I was like, I can't wait to see this film. So yeah, super excited to be here to talk about this movie.
Yeah, just to give you a heads up, guys. So me and Paul haven't been out of the cinema that long. I think it's been about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And I'm not joking, folks. This is probably like laying my cards on the table straight away. I've just been pacing about my living room for the last 2 hours, like in a good way, but we'll get into it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, guys, this is our Longlegs review. This is a film that I sort of mentioned to Paul about, I don't know what it was, like 2 or 3 months ago at this point. It felt like a long time ago. And it was basically me being at work, scrolling through your movie trailers as you normally do. And this little 30-second sort of trailer popped up. It was just a little vague teaser. And I was like, oof, that's done something right there. Just to give you a heads up, guys, on where we're going to be at with this review, it's going to be spoiler-free for like the first 10 minutes. I'll give you a big heads up and we'll get into some spoilers because this is a film that's pretty hard to talk about without spoilers. But we'll give you our overall opinions of the film first. But before that, Paul, how good is this marketing been for this film? Like, regardless of what you think of this film, how good's the marketing been? This is a masterclass in marketing, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really has been. Yeah, ever since that teaser trailer, like you said, about 30 seconds, it was just weird imagery, weird sounds, just an eerie 30 seconds. Then we started getting little longer teaser trailers, and we started finding out, like, sort of piecing together and being told a little synopsis. It's a serial killer, FBI. Nicolas Cage is in there as a serial killer. Just all these started putting these pieces together in these trailers, never giving anything away ever.
No.
They were showing us more each time, but still, even till I watched this movie today, I still didn't know genuinely what it was about. I just knew Nick Cage, serial killer movie, FBI, let's go. That's the only information I needed to. On top of how good the teasers and the trailers have been in the marketing, especially that one that came out the other day when it was the lead actresses sort of showing her heartbeat going in to see Nick Cage's character for the first time, that they say in the marketing. Yeah. It was good though. It got me excited because they kept Nick Cage's characters, what he looked like, very hidden, very secretive throughout all the marketing, and it worked. It worked so well. It's great marketing.
It really, really does work. Like, they could have been so eager to put Nicolas Cage and what he looked like on the posters and stuff like that. And I imagine it would have maybe drawn a few more people into the cinema. But I tell you what, Paul, that cinema that I've just been in was nearly full, nearly packed. This was the first showing of it. It's like everyone in the cinema was dead quiet. They were locked in, locked in the film. But yeah, awesome marketing campaign, brilliant. Never seen anything like it before, to be honest. It was truly the reason that sucked me in and got my hype levels going for this film. Then I would say in the last 2 weeks, mate, the hype has gone through the effing roof because there's been all these reviews come out and stuff like that, and it's held its 100% Rotten Tomatoes score for the last 2 weeks now. Now, you've got to bear in mind, they weren't the major trades, right, that were giving the reviews out at that time. There were small publications. But then yesterday or the day before, all the major trades started releasing their reviews, and I think it's held its 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. I tell you what, guys, it deserves it. This film is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I've got to give you a little bit of, like, I love this sort of dark police procedural type thing. I've spoken about it ad nauseum. favorite TV show of all time is that first season of True Detective. It'll never get better than that for me. And in my top 20 films of all time, you can put Seven in there. You can put Zodiac in there. And I'm happy, like so delighted to say, after seeing this film, it can be put not exactly in the same conversation as those films, as they are better, but my God, it come damn close. And that is a feat in itself. When I go and watch my sadistic movie marathon weekend with Seven, Zodiac, Silence of the Lambs, Longlegs is going in that marathon, mate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I can't believe it. I am so elated with this film. It's probably been, honestly, like, guys, when like your excitement goes through the roof and the hype levels go through the roof, then you start seeing all the reviewers coming out and stuff like that. Normally, more than most, you go and watch that film, it's got all the hype, and it's somewhat of a letdown. And you come out of it and you're like it says on the thumbnail, worth the hype? You goddamn right it's worth the hype. I effing love this film, Paul. I absolutely love it. Like, it stayed with me for like the last 2 hours. I've been walking about this living room, just like going through it in my head. Maika Monroe put in a hellish performance with what she's got to deal with in this film. I don't want to get into it because I don't want to spoil it or anything, but it was a preconceived worry that I had before going into the film that a performance in the trailers looked very stoic. There's a reason for it. Nick Cage in this film.
Scary.
You know what it felt like, Paul, what we were watching here? It felt like we were watching a Batman film without Batman, and we were watching a film about one of its villains. Nick Cage, you drop that guy in the middle of Gotham City, he won't look out of place. Do you know what I mean? And that was another preconceived worry that I had, that we were aware before the film that he does have prosthetics on. And I was sat there in my chair and I was like, right, we haven't seen him. I don't know what he looks like. Are we going to see him? And is it going to take me straight out the movie? I'm happy to say it. Absolutely. They've done a brilliant job. Before I start rambling off anymore, Paul, sorry, guys, what is your overall opinions on Longlegs?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Like you said up top there, give me anything in this sort of wheelhouse, this crime thriller, serial killer, Silence of the Lambs, Seven, Zodiac. I keep going on about it to you off camera. Give me them blue and yellow FBI jackets. I'll be there, man. You'll have me every time. Just something about Federal Bureau of Investigation, serial killers, and just all that just speaks to me. Always has. I've always loved that genre. All growing up, I was massive into the X-Files as a kid. Grew up watching Silence of the Lambs and all these sort of films. Any sort of crime thriller stuff, I'm just all in for. And it delivered what I wanted. This was, I don't want to be hyperboling because I've only walked out of it an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, but I feel like this will be in my top 10 of the year. Easy.
I'm struggling whether I'm putting it in number 1 spot or number 2 spot. Like that's where I am. And I agree, Paul, like it's got that recency bias we've come out, but like I think what it was, because of the hype levels being so big and large, and for me, it was like, oh my God, like basically when David Fincher's Killer came out last year, I was really looking forward to that film. And to be honest, guys, that was an even bigger letdown because I had years to look up to that film. Do you know what I mean? Like that got announced sort of, I think, in the pandemic stages. So like we knew about it for a long time, ended up watching it, total letdown for me. This has been the total polar opposite of that I've had these extraordinary expectations, went into it, and they've delivered pretty much on everything that I had in my head and wanted. I think what the problem is here is that they've, in the last 2 weeks, really, really bigged up the horror aspect of it and said you're going to be like, it's the scariest film of all time, which one of them comes about every so often. You get your Hereditary, but that mostly does live up to its name. This is way more police procedural than I think people might be expecting. And the thing is with police procedurals, we're so like inundated with them on TV, as in like TV shows, that I think sometimes a police procedural can get overlooked. Not often do they get given a big enough budget to propel them on the big screen anymore. I can't remember the last really good police procedural serial killer movie we had. We had one a couple of years ago called The Little Things with Jared Leto and Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Total letdown, that film.
Yeah,
total letdown. Should have been amazing. Well, not amazing. It just should have been way better than what it was. So I don't feel like we get a lot of these big budget police procedurals. And I'm saying big budget, guys. This had a budget of 10 million, and its opening previews, it's earned 3.5 million. This film will 100% earn its money back, and it's totally warranted. 10 million this film cost. And I've just watched a trailer for Captain America, and that film cost 300 million. Barely looks like it cost 10 million. What the hell? But anyway, different kettle of fish. That all I'm saying is this film goes a long way for the budget that it actually does, in my opinion. It looks amazing. Like the cinematography of this film is breathtaking. A multitude of different aspect ratios that I really appreciated. It uses that in its sort of narrative to a really good effect. Like this film spans over like a 30-year time period, and it sort of beat you over the head with, right, now we're in 1972. Now we're in 1992. It sort of gives you these little clues. And like a big one of them clues is like, I found it quite funny. Whenever you see what president was on the wall, that's when you know what era you're in. But Paul, just about sort of the way this film looks, because I think like cinematography wise, the actual filmmaking aspect of this film, it's drop dead gorgeous. Bleak, but gorgeous.
I mean, one of the things that, really sold me on it just around the hype was the writer and director, Oz Perkins, who is famous for being Anthony Perkins' son, who is famous for being Norman Bates in the Psycho movies. I've never seen an Oz Perkins film before. I had a little quick look through his filmography earlier this morning. And there's a couple of films on his filmography I feel like I want to watch just through looking through it. It's like, oh, that looks good. But this is the first film I've seen of his. Mate, what a great director this guy is. Just shot the shit out of this movie. And like you said, there's a tone to these sort of films, and they all have that sort of grim, sort of washed out sort of tone, but it fits so well. True Detective even does it. True Detective has that sort of washed out color tone. Seven has it, Mind Hunters had it, the Netflix FBI. You know the tone that I'm talking about when I'm saying these things, like it's sort of like washed out, sort of even that sort of 70s gritty feel to it. I will echo what you said. The hyperbole in terms of the scares in this film have been high. People saying like horror film of the decade. I've seen a few people say today, as in like scare factor. There were some jumpy bits in it. I did jump. I was uneasy in parts. I was sort of nervous in parts. It isn't a horror film though. It is like Silence of the Lambs. It's a bit more unhinged than Silence of the Lambs. But I remember being younger and being sort of introduced to Silence of the Lambs, and people say it's horror, it's scary. But I enjoyed it because it was sort of this crime thriller, trying to find this guy. And I all enjoyed, and all that is in this Longlegs. So if you are a fan of them films like Silence of the Lambs, Seven, Zodiac, you can have a good time with this. It is not as bombastic and epic as them films. It's a bit of a smaller film. But if you are into sort of FBI crime thriller, trying to solve a mystery, you're going to love it. You're going to absolutely love this film.
Would you agree that while it does sort of the comparisons are there with Silence of the Lambs, Seven, stuff like that, do you see that this sort of stands on its own though and provides something quite original to it as well? Without getting into spoilers, we might get into that section in spoilers, but I think I was thinking it up to a certain point, but then something happens in the film and I'm like, oh no, this is bringing its own sort of originality to the fold here.
Yeah, so them sort of films we are talking about are very, very grounded in reality. This film goes in a bit of a direction that I feel like I was taught. I feel like I might have had it spoilt for me, but not sort of intentionally. I think I'd read something about the film that we will get into that is in there, and for me, like you said, it works on its own because I haven't seen that before. I've seen it in. It's been in. It's hard to say without spoiling it. It's been in sort of FBI crime thrillers before, the element they use in this, but I can't think of anything film wise they've used it in.
I know what you're saying. It's hard to
Yeah,
get into. It's
yeah,
hard to
yeah,
get
yeah.
into. But I think honestly that aspect that we are talking about as well could make or break some people for sure.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I think. Don't get me wrong. There was a couple coming out of the theater when I was stood outside waiting for my missus. They come out and go, "What the hell was that? What was even going on in that film?" I was like, "No way! It doesn't warrant whatsoever." But yeah, I think maybe some aspects in the third act could maybe take some people out. It didn't for me. It sucked me even further in because I thought, oh, that is the originality that this is bringing that differentiates this from them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But guys, Osgood Perkins, that's a name you are about to hear a whole lot more. This guy, I just think he's going to get a lot of work after this because not only is it just like a story that riveted me and stuff like that, just on the filmmaking aspect of it, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking film. And I know you were saying about the washed out colors and stuff like that, but there are a lot of there's a lot of warm colors in this, especially with Maika Monroe's where she lives, a house and stuff like that. She doesn't need to live in a house that's spooky, by the way.
Yeah. Without getting into spoilers, if you're after a crime thriller movie, like we said, in the films, in the sort of same vein as Seven, Silence of the Lambs, this is the film for you. Great performances, eerie as hell, creepy in parts, sucks you into the story, makes you a part of you want to help solve the mystery as you're watching the film. You're trying to sort of piece it together in your own head, like, oh, I wonder this, that. You know, you're pointing your finger at who it could be, who's involved, who's not involved. Original in aspects. There's things in it. I've watched a lot of these films that are quite similar. There's a bit of quite a bit of originality to Longlegs. It does just live up to the hype. It is one of the best. I'm not going. Is it a horror film? Is it a horror film?
I mean, it is, but it is sort of.
It's got horror elements to it, hasn't it?
It's if you're having a Sunday dinner, right, or whatever, and this is the salt that you put on your Sunday dinner. It's sprinkled over it the horror elements. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a full-on horror film, which is obviously somewhat what the marketing of the film has displayed. So that's even it's one of them. It's like where the best way, right, to prepare yourself going into this film, think of it as if you're going to watch more of like an A24 type horror film. Don't go into it thinking you're going to watch
brutal murders and
it's not got to kill every 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Don't be thinking stuff like that. And it was quite funny before I went and saw this film. Paul told me, he was like, oh yeah, it's a 15, you know, it's not an 18. That shocked me beyond belief when you look at the trailers and stuff like that. Yeah, I see why 15 now. Like, don't if you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to go and watch this because it's going to be too much. It's not. It's not.
It is going to be in my top 10 of the year. I can feel it. Like I walked out so happy with this film. It's we don't get these sort of films. They don't come around too often when we're inundated with sort of like big IP reboots and prequels and sequels and comic book movies. We just don't get these sort of movies anymore. And I love these sort of movies. They're so 90s, early 2000 movies where you get a great cast of characters, a great story, like the psychological thriller, this mystery element to it, the spookiness, just all these things just come together to make just a great movie. And I believe it was Oz Perkins. I think if he's been trying to get this film off the ground for a while, it's sort of like his baby that he's been trying to make for a while. And yeah, like you said, after this, man, I'm going to be checking this guy out going forward. I'm going to go back and watch a few of his other films. Like I said, I had a quick look at his filmography earlier, and there was a few films, and I think I seen one with like Emma Roberts in. I was like, oh, that looks good. I'll check that out. But yeah, going forward, man, I'll be checking out this guy. He's absolutely knocked it out of the park, and he's given me everything that I wanted in this film. Got a few nitpicks, which we will get into, but overall, highly, highly, highly enjoyed it.
Nick Cage is a producer on this film. And I was watching an interview with Osgood Perkins. And, you know, if you get Nick Cage in your film, I bet there's a sort of element there that you just want to let him riff and let Nick Cage just go, Nick Cage. But actually, Nick Cage would come out and he said, like, this isn't a movie to serve Nick Cage. I'm here to serve the movie. And I'm not going to change anything that Osgood Perkins has written in the script. I'm going to adhere to everything he's wrote, all the words and stuff like that. So I think you could easily fall in the trap of thinking that this is Nick Cage just going mental and improvising. And he didn't improvise at all, which I found pretty interesting, to be fair. But yeah, let's get in to spoilers here, guys. Spoilers ahead, guys. Last warning. Right, mate, I want to talk about that opening scene straight off the bat, because it's a scene that we've all seen in the trailers quite a lot. It's sort of, we've never seen Nicolas Cage's face in the marketing. We've only seen half of his face. And there's a bit where it's like a snowy backdrop. He's in front of a house and he's talking. Now, the film actually opens up with that particular scene of Nicolas Cage driving to the house. It's an eerie, eerie, eerie scene. And this is why the marketing is so goddamn genius, because you haven't seen Nicolas Cage for months. Knew he was in the film. And this first scene, I did not expect. This is where we'd get our first tiny little glimpse of Nick Cage. And this is maybe say your first sort of jump scare for the movie. Then it hits the credits. Mate, when that scene happened and he bends down and it's him and the credits come on and you got that, oh my God. I was like,
shit my pants.
I was throwing my money at the screen there and then. And I was like, oh my God, this film just if it just keeps this up for the rest of the way, and it really does. I mentioned beforehand, Paul, that when I was watching the trailers for this film, Maika Monroe had me kind of worried. I was like, is this performance feels very stoic, very just sort of almost like yes. So pleased to say there's an absolute bloody reason for it. The man downstairs, like, oh my God. But Maika Monroe's character in this film is just very sort of not there whatsoever. She's perceived to be a psychic as well. But to me, that's sort of later revealed. The reason she's not psychic is just she's still in this sort of curse loop that Nicolas Cage is set. If you want a really good film about a cursed doll, don't go and watch Annabelle. Go and watch Longlegs. I didn't know that's where the film was going, really.
Not at all.
There is this sort of paranormal element to it, but I would argue that it's not really paranormal. Maybe it's more satanic, right? So because we're in the 90s, we're dealing with this 30-year time period set from the 70s to the 90s, or 20-year time period. It deals a lot without hitting you over the head with the satanic panic that was in that era, like with the Manson family and stuff like this. There's an argument to be made that Longlegs' character is a lot like Charles Manson, but this guy actually did get hooked up with the devil. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of devil sort of worshipping in this film. That's basically, you know, the crux of this film is how is Longlegs committing these murders without actually being in the house or being anywhere near it and stuff like that. And we eventually learn in the third act that it is down to this doll, and it's actually down to Harker's mother as well, which I was not expecting, mate. I wasn't expecting her to have such a prevalent role, but after the fact, and when you finish watching the film and stuff like that, and there's a bit in the middle of the film where Lee Harker, the chief detective, has told Lee Harker to go and speak to her mum, because we do get a bit of a reveal in this film that Lee Harker, Maika Monroe's character, has met Longlegs before when she was little. and she actually took a photo of Longlegs as well, which that scene where it unravels that she realizes, oh my God, I took a photo of Longlegs, and there's that other jump scare in there, but it all climaxes to this like, oh my God. And it's that first shot of the movie when he bends down. Just it works so well together, like picking up, starting things and picking it up later on and stuff. The mother having a big role in this with the paranormal element of the dolls, and absolutely loved it. Paul, what did you think about obviously like the opening with the Longlegs character? I wasn't expecting to see him that early on in the film, so that was a pleasant surprise. And what did you think about the paranormal aspect of this film?
Yeah. So yeah, oh mate, that opening scared me, made me jump. My whole cinema jumped. The screen I was in was pretty full. I think there was about 5 or 6 seats, not with anyone in. The rest of it was full. I felt everyone jump. I felt everyone go for it. Yeah, that intro was eerie as hell. I sort of read the aspect ratio that changed and the credits playing. Loved the intro. Absolutely locked me in straight away. I was like, oh yeah, we're in for something special here. In terms of the paranormal stuff, loved it. Now, I had read that there was sort of paranormal elements to it. That's all I'd read, paranormal elements. So I knew she was going to have some sort of, I'm not going to say powers, it's not powers, but some sort of psychic abilities or something along them lines. And it harkens back to, it harkens back to,
nice.
Yeah. The FBI, when they first started doing like serial killer, they touched on this in the Mindhunter TV show, that they would hire like psychics to sort of help them, profile serial killers and stuff like that. But obviously it was all debunked and whatnot. But so they were using elements of that in. It didn't go too over the top of it though. The sort of psychic, paranormal, satanic was what you used. That word works better for me because it's not really paranormal. It is more sort of like satanic and sort of stuff in it. It worked for me. It felt like it was ripped out of the mind of like it's cliches, help like a Stephen King sort of novel or stuff. It wasn't your clear cut sort of serial killer movie. It had more elements to it, and that really. So that's when we were saying in the non-spoiler bit, can it stand on its own? For that reason is why it stands on its own, because I haven't really seen that in that sort of film before, and it was explained. It wasn't just forced in there for just have spooky moments in it and to have this sort of paranormal aspect to it. If we jump back to the movie Black Phone, do you remember that? Did you?
Yes.
A couple of years with Ethan Hawke. The film was sort of like grounded, and it was this serial killer sort of thing, but then they just forced in this sort of supernatural element to it, but did not explain the rules in its own movie of why this stuff was happening. In this, it didn't for a while, but then it started explaining why this was happening, and then it all made sense to me. Yeah, it's not sort of grounded in reality. It's not real, but it really added that sort of horror element to the movie, and it really worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. To piggyback off what you were saying there, and it's a really good point. Like, so the Black Phone was like a film I was really looking forward to, and I was loving it to a certain extent. And as soon as the paranormal activity element came into that film, I was out. I was checked out, and it was a massive shame because Ethan Hawke was awesome in that. This is basically a very similar sort of like case with this film, like you were saying there, but they managed to do it in a way that's not so heavy-handed, and I really appreciated that. Like, yeah, this film's metal. This film is rock and roll. Like, it truly is. And that last scene of the film, like, mate, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just like, oh my God, I can't believe he went back to that scene. And the particular scene I'm talking about, and it's the best scene in the film for me personally, is the interrogation scene, which we have sort of seen snippets of in trailers and stuff like that. I didn't realize that would be the last scene we were going to see with Nicolas Cage. And I was also very worried after that bit as well. I was like, oh my God, how's this film going to wrap up? But the wrap up for me was very satisfying. You know, when you get to the end of these police procedurals and there's a big exposition dump of what happened and who was the bad guy all along. Yeah, there is one of them in this, and I fucking loved it. I absolutely loved it. When she, like, the Lee Harker's mother like starts explaining what's been happening, it was just like, I love this. And when you realize that, oh my God, the entirety of this film Nicolas Cage, Longlegs, has been in the basement of Lee
yeah.
Hacker's mum's house.
He's when they keep referring to the man downstairs, and in your head, they're talking about hell and Satan, and you find out no, it was him living in, the Maika Monroe's character's basement when she was a kid the whole time. That's eerie. And we'd seen snippets of him in this basement, but we didn't realise until later on in the movie it's the basement of the house he went to at the start. And just creepy, man.
Osgood Perkins is definitely wearing his influences on his sleeve, because that whole basement area where Longlegs was, and his his mirror and stuff like that. If you go and watch Silence of the Lambs and you watch Buffalo Bill in his basement where he keeps people trapped in the well and stuff like that, very, very similar vibes. I
think that's the same vibe in every serial killer's basement. It's always mad drawings and mirrors and broken mannequins and weird shit.
And if you watch in Buffalo Bill's basement, he's got a load of mannequins in there as well. So it's like them two need to start a band together, man. They really do. But going back to that interrogation scene, Paul, what did this interrogation scene remind you of?
The Dark Knight.
Oh my God, mate! This scene, man, was like it. I couldn't believe it when it was happening. Like he must have thought when he was filming that scene. Yeah, this is very akin to the Dark Knight and that whole interrogation scene in the Dark Knight. It's amazing. It was very much like that. And both them scenes end pretty dramatically. One ends with you got to pick between Rachel and Harvey Dent, and this one ends with Nicolas Cage taking his own bloody face off. Like I wasn't expecting that whatsoever.
Off.
Face off. And the fact that they end the film, it's so funny. It's like they don't need to go back to that shot in the interrogation scene, because at this point in the film he's dead. But it was just like, I know that scene was that bloody good. We're gonna go back to it. And the last shot of him just hail Satan, bang! I was like, oh my God. And mate, did you notice in the credits as well? They were going down.
Yes, I did notice that. I was like, what is going on here?
Down to Dante's Inferno, man. I'm not going to get into it here because I don't know enough about it. But when I was talking to my partner after the film, mate, there is so many biblical sort of through lines in this film. A lot of it is to do with religion and stuff like that. There's a lot of similarities and whatnot with Adam and Eve and the snakes. There was a lot of cuts to snakes in this film, which is obviously Adam and Eve getting spoken to by the snake in the garden and whatnot. There's a lot of similarities here. And what's your opinion then on who Longlegs, because we don't really get a full explanation of why Longlegs gets in the occult or why he starts worshipping Satan. There's not this ain't an origin story. We end up in the middle of this unresolved case, but it doesn't really dive too much in Nick Cage's personal sort of background or whatever. We just know he's good at making dolls. He's very pale and he loves T-Rex. Why not? But were you happy or were you a bit disappointed that we didn't get more Nicolas Cage for that matter, because he's not in the film that much? The bits that we do get with him leave an imprint though, 100%. The shop scene when we first get a glimpse of him in his bloody dressing gown. Woo!
Eerie, man.
My God, mate.
I don't think it's one of them where you show us too much, then the sort of mystique and the sort of eerie. It's I didn't want him to come back on screen, because every time he was on screen, he was freaking me out. So if you kept showing us, Oz Perkins did such a great job. We didn't see him at all for the first 45 minutes, and then we were introduced to him when he went to that shop and that little girl was serving him. And when he did the cuckoo thing, that's weird as hell. And then we've seen him full for the first time. I was like, oh, he's a weird looking dude, man. Just every time he was on screen, I just felt uncomfortable. So by not giving us him every 2 or 3 minutes, every time it cut back to him, I was like, oh, this creepy bastard's back on screen again. In terms of what he was trying to do and what he was trying to accomplish, sometimes I think a bit of ambiguous helps a film. you don't really need to know what his purpose was. You just need to know he was a sick serial killer and he worshipped the devil and he was using satanic cult stuff to kill families. That's really all you need to it. I will admit I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get a sort of after the fact in terms of the ending. It sort of was quite a ambiguous ending as well. It's just like, we've survived, cut to credits. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to know if they'd solved the crime, which we don't really get the crime solve of this film.
Yeah, because just bear in mind, guys, we haven't been out the cinema that long, so it's still going through in my head and stuff like that. The one little bit that had me sort of, why is she not Maika Monroe's character, Lee Harker? So in the final scene where we're at the chief's house and he's basically killing his wife in the next room, I found it pretty strange that she didn't move. She didn't try and help or stop the situation, did she? It was like, I did find that quite strange. I was wondering why she's not doing that. Maybe she didn't want to leave the child with a mother, do you know what I mean, who's clearly sort of not lost it. In my head, her mother, as well as Maika Monroe, they've just been cursed ever since they saw Longlegs. They do have a doll in that house. I know he's got a million downstairs, but when you actually see when Lee Harker goes back to her mum's house in the sort of end final chapter a little bit, and she's walking through the living room, and her mum's a complete hoarder. She hoards everything. She wasn't like that before Longlegs, though, which I found interesting. This has become a thing after it. You see a before Longlegs, when Lee Harker's a little girl, and the house is very clean, very kept. Do you know what I mean? Later on down the line, the house is a mess. It's hoarded and stuff like that. But basically, her mum sat on this throne of, all I can say, it's washing, like clothes. You know what I mean? This big pile of clothes. And when Lee Harker's walking back through the house near the end, you can see in the top right-hand corner, the doll in the right-hand corner, and it's sort of just looking over the living room in the house.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Alice. I believe we don't get told this, but I might have missed something. A sentence said here or there in the film. We don't find out how he sort of wrapped her mother around his fingers. We get told he's basically said, if you help me do what I'm doing, I won't kill your daughter, because he's obviously, his sort of motive is he's killing families who have daughters on their 14th birthday, either 6 days or 6 days before or 6 days after their birthday. That's right, yeah. So he turns up at the start to Lee Harker's family home. She goes, takes a picture of him. Then we don't ever hear or see anything as to. We see little snippets of her mum coming out talking to him, saying, "Who are you? Why are you here?" But we don't ever see an exchange of, "If you do this for me, I won't kill your daughter." Or do we? We don't see that, do we?
We don't see that, but we definitely get that in the exposition dump right at the end, coming from Lee Harker's mum. She sort of explains it like, I basically did a bargain with the devil. Do you know what I mean? I made a deal with the devil, basically. Paul, what did you think about the chief of police? Because for me, he was very much needed in this film, because he was sort of like not a breath of fresh air, but when he was on screen, I felt a little bit more relaxed. My anxiety levels weren't going through the roof, because he's quite funny. Do you know what I mean? Not funny, but like, he's got a bit of levity there, which this film absolutely needs. But what did you think about the chief of police in this film?
I like just his straight approach in the film. Anytime you get this sort of character in these sort of films, just the straight approach, sort of chief of police, like no messing around sort of guy. He, the reason Lee Harker is brought onto the case is because they find out that she is psychic. She does that sort of psychic test in the movie, which reminded me a bit of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So she has like this weird like psychic test that's sort of like in this room when they're showing her like weird pictures and that. So they bring her on to the case for that, because the start of the film, when she's older, is her sort of, they're trying to find a serial killer, and she just instinctively goes, he's in that house. And her partner at the time, who she's with, has no idea how she knows it, why. She just goes, he's in that house, and he goes, I'll go check it. Gets shot, which scared the crap out of me. That made me jump as well. So she's brought on to the case because she's got these psychic powers, but all the while she's figuring out this stuff using her sort of abilities, if you like, as well as her own. She's just good at a job at solving these sort of problems, but she's using ability as well. And she's taking this evidence to him, and he's just going, "I need more. It's not enough. Let's go and do this." And then she'll give him some evidence. There's a bit where she goes, something to do with a farmhouse, and he's going, "Right, let's go. It's 87 miles away. Let's go right now." He's just like the take charge sort of captain, and he was a great guy. I don't think I've seen him in anything before. If I have, I didn't recognize him, but he was great on screen. Them two worked together really well.
Like, there's just a number of shots in it that I absolutely loved. Like, there's one shot of, when Nick Cage finally realizes he's busted and he's got his suitcases and he's just on the road. The way that, so it's sort of, we're looking at one of the dolls that he's made, then it sort of blends into his face on the side of this road, and it's like the first real good square point blank look that we've got at Nick Cage. And it starts off from his eyes and just pans out from across the road, while the music sort of warm. Really, it just on it so bloody sinister, man, so sinister, and like. Just awesome. Mate, I could go on about this film for so long. Have you got any sort of final points you want to say in this spoiler section?
Out of everything that happened in this film, I was sort of glued into it, story-wise. The only thing that I sort of was scratching my head at slightly on a second viewing, you might be able to explain to me right now, but on second viewings, third viewings, I might be able to pick up on it. The whole silver orb brain in the doll element, and that bit I was a bit like, I don't quite get what they're going for here. And also when the mum shoots the doll of her daughter, like this black mist comes off her. I'm presuming that's her powers, but yeah. I don't understand. I can't understand why she's got powers and why she loses them.
Right. This might not be it. This is just sort of my evaluation of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
As soon as that doll goes into these houses, right, it curses the entire family. Mm-hmm. So until whatever's in that ball in the head of the dolls, which is this, let's just call it black voodoo magic for now, is the thing that controls the family. Hence why Maika Monroe through the entire film is being just detached. The same as a mum, because did you not get the impression when she was ringing her mum at the start of the film? There's something off here. There's something.
Yeah. I thought she was going to be already dead or something. That's where I was going with it.
I would say is that is the most supernatural element that you see in the entire film, and it's just this sort of smoke that comes off Maika Monroe. And to me, that's just saying, right, that doll's down now that was in her mum's house. That curse is now being lifted. Maika Monroe can go and sort this stuff out. Do you know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong. I like it when movies. I like it when movies do this, where it leaves things for you for to have discussions like this. It's just not all black and white on the screen. You know what I mean? There's things you can interpret for yourself. But I don't mind it. But I was a bit like, I feel like I've missed something, or I'm thinking that's the way it is, but it might not be, sort of thing. But yeah, you've explained it quite well, to be fair. Yeah.
And did you catch the sort of black figure that was throughout the film?
Yeah, that was eerie. Which is basically the devil, if you like, isn't it? Sort of like a manifestation of the devil.
I just see Longlegs, like the villain. My own interpretation of it is that he is just a disciple of Satan himself. Yeah. Like, we're just going literal with it, man. Do you know what I mean? And then the mother becomes another disciple through hardship and through a deal with the devil sort of thing. But
did you have any negatives for it?
Man, this is it. Like, my negative at the start of the film was to do with Maika Monroe. I was like, I'm not, because the only thing this is missing, mate, is a Matthew McConaughey or a Woody Harrelson, like them sort of charismatic characters that you get invested on. You know what I mean? You don't just have the charismatic lead villain. But here, because there's a reason for that blankness that is answered later on in the film, I'm like, all right, well, that's that negative. It's like, what's
Mhm.
what's my other negative going to be here? Oh, it's going to be Nicolas Cage. I know it. Then he comes on screen and he just absolutely fucking blows me away, mate. Like, Paul, I wish I had a negative. I'm honestly trying to like be level-headed, try and think of any criticisms I might have, because you could maybe say, oh, it's pretty slow. Have you ever seen a police procedural?
Yeah.
They are slow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's perfectly paced in my eyes. There's a bit of a drought in the middle, but because it's her investigating, deciphering codes and shit like that, like Zodiac, I'm all for it. All
Yeah.
for it. Like, I love it. So I'm struggling, Paul. Like, I'm really struggling, and this ain't like me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like to have a bit of a bitch and a moan sometimes, even when it's not warranted. But here, mate, I'm just absolutely ecstatic. I'm absolutely ecstatic. It's like I'm struggling, like where it lands, like on my list, because it's like I gave Dune a 5 stars out of 5, and like with this much sort, like I wasn't pacing about for 2 hours after Dune. Do you know what I mean? Like I've literally haven't stopped thinking about this film since I come out the cinema. I haven't been able to sit down properly. So take that for what it's worth, people. You know, like it's a 4.5 stars out of 5 for me right now. I'm the only reason it's not 5 because I don't know what's holding it back from a 5, to be honest. I don't know what's holding it back from a 5. I really don't. It's cemented 4.5 stars for me. Paul, how would you rate this film?
Yeah, like you, I've really not got much to go on in terms of negative, and there's normally something in a film, something that I wish they'd done different, or I wish that it sort of took me out slightly. I was locked in, and this film, well, I think it was an hour and 40 minutes, flew by for me. The credits went up. I was like, wow, mate, was that an hour and 40 minutes already? I was locked in, start to finish. My only two negatives, and the sort of similar things, and these are nitpicks, man, these might go away, but on repeat viewings, was that sort of middle bit when she goes to her mum. I felt like the film slowed down a bit. It had gone from a sort of crime procedure to sort of like a family drama sort of thing. But again, it was just because I was waiting to get back to start solving the crime. Let's go. I want to solve it with you. I'm watching this film. I want to watch you solve this crime, sort of thing. My second little nitpick, again, might go away on repeat viewings, probably will, is the sort of ambiguous ending. That's just on me more, because I would like to have known what actually Nick Cage is, Longlegs' sort of goal was, what he was trying to do, and how he sort of got to where what that character was. Do I want to see a Longlegs prequel? Nope. I don't want to see any more. I don't want to see a Longlegs the origin and why he got like that, because it sort of takes the mystique away. But that ending, when the credits hit, I was like, oh, I wish they would have, give us just something, a little bit of, a little 3 months later or something, and maybe have a little bit of a twist ending or something. Like, again, this will go away on repeat viewings. I just maybe wanted a little bit of more of an explanation, or even just a case closed sort of thing to the movie, but we don't get that. Apart from that, though, man, performance wise, 10 out of 10. Cinematography wise, 10 out of 10. Music, 10 out of 10. Story, 9.5 out of 10. It's like it's one of the best films I've seen this year. We don't get films like this often. I love this genre, this crime thriller, FBI detective, sort of horror thriller movie. I love it. I love this shit. We don't get them that often. So when one comes along as good as this, yeah, man, so good. Absolutely enjoyed it. Cannot wait to watch it again. This will be a day one purchase. Cannot wait to sit through this movie again. I'm going to go for 4.5 out of 5 as well. 4.5 out of 5. That could go up. That could easily go up. But yeah, it's hard. Like, there's so many films come out this year, and I'm like, I liked it, but I've sort of forgot about it already. This one I won't forget about for a while. I loved it.
You know what? Like you're saying, like just your first negative there about how it slumps in the middle a little bit, which when she goes to her mum's house, I can't wait to watch that scene again, knowing who's downstairs.
Yeah, knowing the fact. Yeah, exactly. So again, second watch through, you're going to pick up on things because it's sort of an unravel movie. So when you're watching it, knowing how it ends, there's so many great films that you watch the first time and you'll never get that first time experience with it again, because you know how it ends. But when you then go back and watch it knowing how it ends and see the narrative through loop, then it works in a different kind of way. So that'll probably happen with this film.
Yeah, 100% right there, mate. Right, we're going to have to leave it there. And I tell you what, before we go, I'm just going to be true to myself. I haven't been this ecstatic about a film for a very long time. This is a 5 out of 5. This is a 5-star film, baby. Absolutely loved it. But yeah, guys, this has been the Longlegs review, spoiler review. Thank you for sitting through my rambling. I've rambled on to deaf ear on this one, but I'm just very excited. Paul, thank you so much for joining me on this review.
Welcome, man.
Yeah, guys, Longlegs.
Support it. Go watch it, man. Don't wait for this on Shudder or anything. Go watch this, because it won't hit the same watching at home. You need to watch this on the big screen.
I absolutely concur with that. Right, guys, this has been it. Worth the hype, 100%. Thank you for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.